Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, are the Habs already out on Trevor Zegras and Martin Necas?
Your Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1086 of Locked On Canadiens. We are your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week on Google, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube.com if you are watching us there. Today's episode is brought to you guys by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Some terms do apply. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Matla, and as always, I am joined by the active stick, Laura Saba. And Laura, it is still humid and disgusting and awful and a whole bunch of other things, but we are 48 hours, 36 hours really from the NHL Draft Combine.
And also, it's F1 weekend here in Montreal. It is scorching and rainy and et cetera, et cetera. But I'm actually really excited about this week's mailbag episode because we've got two familiar names that we haven't heard from in a while pop back up, and nothing makes me happier than hearing from old friends.
Yes.
Speaking of old friends, the Habs are rumored.
I was going to say, sorry, I'm usually the master of transitions on this. Can you tell that this is like the end of our week? Like my work week is mostly over at this point. I've already thought ahead to the Combine on Saturday, and that's kind of where my brain has been at. You're still getting a good episode for anyone who in my bosses are listening here. Ignore my neighbors coming in and making an F ton of noise. That's always super appreciated. So this is the saga that isn't going to go away, and I don't know how I really feel about that.
Well, it's always the Habs are always in on people, and then it never really pans out. So what are the reports, Scott? Sorry, I keep interrupting you today.
Pierre LeBrun last night said the Canadiens had definitely checked in on Martin Necas and were one of the interested parties. As you would expect, they are looking to, potentially add another piece that is maybe unhappy with their current surroundings or looking for another start. And Martin Necas is probably a step up from Alex Newhook and Kirby Dach in that regard. And then today, we're at the opposite end of things here, that the Canadiens with Trevor Zegras and Martin Necas, it seems like the answer is nope, not going to happen to either. So, Laura, where do we want to start? Do we want to start in Anaheim or do we want to start in Carolina?
Let's start in Anaheim because I feel like that's been the name that's come up a lot more often.
The report on this, from everything that I understand on this, is that not that the Canadiens are not interested, they very much are, but they have, I believe now, I want to phrase this gently because I don't want to be definitive on this because I admittedly did the poor journalist thing and did not put this quote in front of me, is that they are taking a step back because they seem unwilling to potentially give up as much as Anaheim is possibly looking for in this deal, which is probably a lot. Trevor Zegras is arguably one of the core pieces in Anaheim, and this is still a trade that I don't fully understand why his name's on the market, what's going on there, unless something is soured.
Yeah, maybe he wants out. And that to me is the thing too. Like all along, people have been like, we don't want him, he's overrated. We don't want him, he's overrated. And then it's like, well, the Canadiens don't have enough skill. Like honestly, literally, who would ever be available other than a guy like this where things aren't going well with their current team? It could be he wants out. It could be they don't have room for him. It could be that they've decided to go in a different direction in their rebuild and now's the time to restock using him. Right? There could be many, many things. And it's not always a situation where, the guy has an attitude problem. That's why he's available. It's not always that's not always what's going on. So for me, from my perspective, whatever it is, like it does feel like the Canadiens will not be willing. They probably have pieces. They probably have a lot of young pieces in terms of prospects and picks, or even young NHL ready, NHL cusp, NHL not yet established players, but they also have to think about their own future and their own core and their own depth. And once you become a contending team, it gets really hard to get those prospects and high draft picks. So the Canadiens really need to manage their future depth very carefully. So if it's something where they're not willing to give up for Zegras, then I totally understand if the price is too high. But if he's actually available, like I do think that the Canadiens should be inquiring. And as you said, Pierre LeBrun confirmed that they have inquired. So if the price is too high, I'm all for, just let's forget about it. The Canadiens don't need to be in talks about Trevor Zegras anymore.
And here's the thing is that all the nonsensical rumor accounts that you should block on Twitter saying, oh, they're involved and they're going for both. As of today, no, because on the other side, for Martin Necas, Carolina apparently has told Montreal, you don't have anything that we're looking for in this, which is aggressive in the approach considering your cap situation and where you're at with your team right now.
I think that's still some pettiness. That's some like immature, unresolved pettiness.
Here's the thing is, Don Waddell is not the GM of this team anymore. He is now in Columbus. Eric Tulsky is the interim GM of this team. If that's coming from Tom Dundon, you need to absolutely get over yourself because this is not Marc Bergevin's Montreal Canadiens. To say to a team, you don't have anything we might want when they have another top 5 pick this year, had a top 5 pick last year, have a pretty solid, consistently, I want to say in like the top, 7 or 8 of the NHL in terms of prospect pools, and you're saying we have nothing that you are looking for. This is a team that is on the cusp of, I don't want to say tearing it down because I think that they'll figure out a way to make things work, but are in flux from where they were at. This was their best shot year, and they don't have it, and they just don't have it, which is a problem for them right now. So if I'm the Canadiens, I'm looking at this and going, I don't have anything you want. Apparently, teams like Vancouver have inquired. I do not actually know what Carolina is looking for because there hasn't been an ask on the market for this is what we want in a Martin Necas trade. They have not told us that. They haven't said specifically, we want a center, we want a defenseman, we want a goalie, we want a GM, we want people to pay attention to us. We want a football league that didn't fail under our current ownership. We want Hart back from the dead. They haven't told us what they want.
Right.
So
and that brings me to a mailbag question.
What's up with that?
One of our listeners, I believe it was Boondoggle, asked, like, what if the Canadiens offered to take Kk back? What if they do?
that to me doesn't seem like, yes, his contract's not great. But at the same time, I still think that there is a player there right now. But taking him back still means that Carolina is going to have to take a contract off of Montreal's books.
Right, like 100%.
Like, what are you going to do? Like, oh, we have to take Jesperi Kotkaniemi back, but they have to take Christian Dvorak. Oh, fine. I would rather try and figure out if Martin St. Louis and this development staff can get something out of Jesperi Kotkaniemi than do the Christian Dvorak experiment for another year.
Right.
All respect to Christian Dvorak, but I would rather get younger and potentially cheaper in the longer term there than anything else.
Right. Right. And so for me, from my perspective, whatever it is, like there's got to be something that the Canadiens can make work for Carolina. Like the fact that they're like, oh, you have nothing we want. That to me is that's why I think it's unresolved pettiness. It's not, it's not even like I'm going to ask for something that we know you're not going to give, like give us Cole Caulfield or something like that, right? Like they didn't even have that conversation. That's why to me it sounds like it's like a nope. It's we're not doing Montreal. But at the same time, like I wonder, because we talked about this before as well. I know a lot of the listeners are like, no Kotkaniemi, nothing like that. If the front office staff is like able to sit a player down and be like, your ego's overinflated and you're immature and you need to grow up and you need to fix your game. And then the player takes that feedback and actually acts on it. Maybe don't be as harsh as I was, but that's not just for the record. That's not how I would handle a performance conversation, but it boils down to you're immature and your ego's overinflated and your contract is overinflated and you need to shape it up. And you could be a serviceable player. I don't think that, that third overall pick potential is there anymore. But as you said, there is a player in there. Anyway, all this to say is that this is it feels like either somebody, like people are whispering Montreal to make other teams interested, or it just seems like in this case, they called and then Carolina was like, we're not dealing with Montreal because we are big giant babies, which I think better of Eric Tulsky than that, just so you know, but there's a lot of owner-made decisions in that franchise.
And the other part of this is that I would be remiss if I didn't have the context, is apparently there is some smoke to a Linus Ullmark, Martin Necas swap, that the Bruins need to move out a goalie and pay Jeremy Swayman, and Martin Necas fills a desperate need that team has. I hate it, and it's horrible, which is why we're going to now move on from this. I'm sure we will get 7,000 more rumors this weekend, but it is time for the Friday mailbag, and we're going to get into those questions coming up next. But first, buying life insurance can be difficult, and you want to have peace of mind not only for yourself, but for your family and for your future. So with Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid all those unnecessary medical exams. I can tell you, I don't like filling out life insurance stuff. When I got my new job, I hated doing that. It's hard. It's complicated to know exactly what I need. Policy Genius easily helps you compare options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks, and their award-winning agents can even walk you through the process step by step. So get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quote and see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens. It is Friday when you were listening to this, so that means it is our Friday mailbag episode. If you ever want to have your question featured, have a question for us, at LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens at gmail.com as well. We love everything. We are getting into the summertime, so they don't even really have to be about hockey. I know with the draft and free agency right around the corner, that's what everybody wants to know. And trust me, we are understanding of that. Don't get me wrong. Laura, what do we have at the start of the mailbag for today?
So Massimo asks, New Jersey at 10 and Buffalo at 11 have said they're looking to trade their picks. What do you think it would take from Montreal to get either one? People keep trying to make a connection, although I can't see it. Both teams need players who can improve their team now, not later. So I do agree with that argument. Like, the Canadiens have rookies or prospects to offer, or even picks, etc. Buffalo, after where they are, we're like essentially making strides and treading water at the same time, which is like insane to me how that's been going on for so long with Buffalo. And then obviously New Jersey, they need to improve their team now. They do need to do something. Like, I understand that a future player or anything like that is not in their mind, and obviously they do not want Josh Anderson this year.
I'm gonna start with New Jersey here because this is the most interesting one to me, because they also have two players who are off their roster currently due to the Hockey Canada trial and investigation, which were two of their regular players on this team. I'm looking at their defense. I am not blown away. I am looking at their prospects. I am not blown away. Their forward group is very good. It's very interesting to see what Sheldon Keefe will get out of this group here. Because you have guys like Dawson Mercer and Alexander Holtz who maybe didn't get the same chance under Lindy Ruff that they might get under Sheldon Keefe, which is a wild thing for me to say. I do wonder if a guy on an expiring deal like a Yoel Armia might be of use to them as someone who rounds out that bottom six. Because in there, Thomas Nosek, Curtis Lazar, Chris Tierney. So it's, and then their defense has currently Curtis McDermott signed for 3 years for some godforsaken reason. If you're going to be moving up that high, though, I do have to wonder, are you going to be offering one of your defense prospects to this team? Yes, they have Simon Nemec and Seamus Casey coming up here, but there's not a lot behind that for New Jersey. And I think that you're starting with probably someone at the bare minimum, like an Arbor Jacki or Justin Barron, and negotiating pieces beyond that for New Jersey. This is a team that needs to rebound quickly. They have a lot of guys signed to big money contracts like Timo Meier, Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, Andre Palat, etc. There's a lot that they can do with that. And as for Buffalo, I don't know what to make of the Sabres. I have tried and I have tried. I can't put it together in my head. They need another goalie, unless Devin Levi can take that next step. They've got a lot of prospects. I don't know who off of this Canadiens team right now I could offer to them in that forward group to kind of round that out a little bit and somehow move up in. We're assuming the 26th overall pick is likely included in this to move up. I don't know what forward on the roster that the Canadiens would part with that could go to Buffalo for a right now piece and actually be effective. I don't know what to think of it. They have money to play with, but like you said, they're not going to want Josh Anderson. At least I hope it'd be cool if they did, but if they don't, what are you going to do? Exactly.
And so it is intriguing, but I don't see it like Massimo said. I don't really see it, but and so I have another question from our good friend, Richard, the architect. Richard, it is so good to hear from you. It's been a while. Small question for the mailbag. Say the Canadiens use D-men and draft capital to sign a potential 70-plus point player, and say that trade involves Harris and Barron, so Jordan Harris and Justin Barron. Let's discuss a scenario whereby the Habs actually take a D-man for a second straight year. Hughes had said that BPA was the primary driver and position would gain favor if they consider both players equal. However, on a pure ability ceiling, could we consider a player like Parekh to be outright a better player than Lindstrom, Iginla, and Catton? I'm very much pro-forward, but Hugo has taught me to expect the unexpected.
This is an interesting question for me.
It's a tricky one.
Because, here's the thing is that everyone has their heart set on a forward, including us. But I also kind of look at this and I go, if they are trading a defenseman, and there's a lot of good ones in this draft, at 6th overall, you can have anyone. I would be shocked if Levshinov is that far, but Salayev, Pareka, Zeev Buyam, Sam Dickinson, Carter Yakemchuk, there's names in there that the Canadiens, if they really do want to add to this defensive group and continue to keep that pipeline stocked, the options are there for it because it is a much deeper forward class. Getting rid of 2 defensemen is probably a necessary thing because you're not going to get Barron into the AHL next year. Potentially, you're not going to send Jacket out. What are you going to do in terms of defensemen there? But I am curious if, hey, we're going to trade some of these defensemen and then just restock that and kick that can down the line, a year, 2 years, and run into the same problem again when that forward group is going to be opening up when you have expiring deals. Guys like Armia are going to be gone. Guys like Dvorak are going to be gone. Gallagher's contract's coming to an end. Anderson's contract coming to an end or traded. And you have space there for all these younger guys coming up. It's the classic debate for, do you actually draft the best player available? Like he said, if Beckett Seneca is there and Zane Pareka is there, Pareka is arguably the best player available, but you need that. I have like Richard here, I have learned to just never I've learned to never not expect the I'm screwing up what I'm trying to say here. I have come to expect the unexpected from Hughes and Gorton here. And I don't know what they're going to do. I truly don't. Mock drafts say Demidov. Some of them say that they're going to take a defenseman. Some of them say they're picking Seneca. I don't know. And I would like to go with the forward still because that is my headcanon. But I understand the logic of, hey, this defenseman is the actual best player available. So.
Right. And so, obviously, Richard's question was predicated on the fact that Barron and Harris would get traded. But let's say they don't get traded and the best player available is a defenseman and the Canadiens do pick him. 1, how jammed up is this fan base going to be? And 2, that makes them both expendable. even more so than we would think, right? And that's, I think, the big thing is that then the Canadiens will have these two guys to offer. Not that they didn't have either Harris or Struble or Kovacevic. I'm always going to pronounce it incorrectly, but him. So they would have these players that they can then offer in a trade that become expendable because they picked a star defenseman as their best player available in that moment.
Yeah. We do have more mailbag questions, and we're going to jump into the rest of those coming up next. But first, as I said off the top of the show, today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. It is the NBA Finals. The NHL Stanley Cup Finals are on right now. And if you're in one of those cities that you want to get tickets and you don't want to fight with hidden fees, just trying to work through everything and you want the best deal possible, you got to check out GameTime because they make it so easy to get tickets faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down closer to the start of whatever game show you are looking for. You can get last minute ticket deals, flash deals, zone deals. Easy to find and buy tickets for baseball games, hockey games, whatever concerts, shows you want to go see with views from your seat, the lowest price guaranteed because there are no hidden fees. When you go to check out, the price you see is the price you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets today with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Some terms will apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. Lowest last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens. It is our last segment of the mailbag. Remember, if you ever have mailbag questions, at LO_Canadiens, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Laura, we've probably got time for one or two, depending on how long the questions are.
I'm gonna select. So this one comes from our good friend Jordan R. And I'm reading it because it made me laugh out loud. Hi, Scott and Laura. I recently discovered that my brother listens to your podcast based on the way he worded a mailbag question. That's awesome. I'm sorry. That just made me laugh out loud when I read it, and I wanted to bring it up. I wanted to take a quick second to remind us all why we watch the sport in the first place. Family tradition. My earliest memories of the Habs is coming home from my kindergarten pictures in New Jersey and seeing the beaming pride on my dad's face. I wanted to give my brother a quick nod because we now carry on watching the games with his sons, my nephews. Is there someone in your life that influenced your love for the Habs or perhaps a certain player? The cooler brother, Jordan R. So I expect to hear from Kyle on this very shortly.
So here's the thing is that I grew up in Western New York where the Buffalo Sabres were religion for the longest time with Rick Jenneret as the head of that church and gospel there. For me, like I said, and I've said it a ton of times, Saku Koivu is the one who got me interested in the Montreal Canadiens at first, hearing about his battle with cancer and his comeback. And then a player from my hometown being named captain, signing and then eventually being named captain of the Montreal Canadiens really kind of fully sealed my love in for this team.
Oh,
I don't have a
Turku?
deep... Huh?
You're from Turku? I know who you're talking about. You're talking about Brian Jonta. I know.
I was going to say, like, geez, why am I getting slandered on my own show? My God. I wish I was from Finland. That'd be super cool. But it's like I don't have a deep like family story like gathering around on Saturday nights to listen to the call on Hockey Night in Canada or on the radio or anything like that. Mine is much less interesting than other people's.
So I have a story like that for football or soccer, as you guys call it here, and that would have been Bayern Munich and my late uncle. But for the Habs connection, it was literally a boy, and then obviously Saku. So that's
you went to Finland to date a boy, Laura? That's incredible.
I deserved that. So we actually have some intriguing like trade related questions and a very, very interesting question from Claude S. But I did want to move it to something more topical. So obviously, you guys might not know this, but I will be on vacation for most of next week and the following week. So a lot of these topics will come up in Scott's shows as well. He's got some other content planned. But in the meantime, I did want to shout out our good friend Paul Brancho, who also we had not heard from in a while, literally said, "Hey kids, long time no speak. I have a few questions for the mailbag episodes that are tangentially related to the Formula One Canadian Grand Prix. As you know, that's happening this weekend. The first question I'm going to put to the listeners, because I do not know. I'm one of those people that, I put it on my Netflix list to watch the Formula One series that got everybody into F1, and I still haven't watched it. It's on my list, and then every time there's a new season, I'm like, oh, I should watch that, and I don't. And I know, Scott, you're the same way. So here's the question real quick. Since it's Formula One time in Montreal, how would you tier the Habs and 9 main rivals, Toronto, Boston, Detroit, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, Tampa Bay, Chicago, and the Rangers, in relation to the 10 F1 teams? Ottawa has to be Alpine, right? The potential is there, but they can't help but kick themselves in the groin all the time. I will put these in the show notes, these rivals, so that you guys can answer the question. All right. And then on 2 other questions. A few weeks back, a new hockey fan asked in the Habs Reddit why they should choose the Canadiens as their team to cheer for. I mentioned the successful team history and worldwide brand recognition that compares to Manchester United, New York Yankees, and for the racing link, Ferrari. What other major sports teams do you think are in the same tier as the Habs when it comes to recognition throughout the world? I mean, I was going to say the Manchester United thing for football.
For me, to bring it back to American football, you have failure and all the Dallas Cowboys, who are recognized around the world, and the Green Bay Packers, who are also recognized around the world in that regard. For baseball, you have the Yankees, you have the Cubs, you have the Dodgers, especially with more and more international players joining these teams from Japan and other places. They become a lot more popular in hockey. And I know that people aren't going to want to hear this. You have the Canadiens, and Toronto is probably one of the more well-known teams across the world just because they're one of the oldest teams in the world. Whoever is also winning the most at a given time. So it might have been LA for a little bit, and then it was Chicago, and you had the Bruins for a minute, and just it all depends on who is winning the games at that time. Tampa Bay.
At the time you're around, essentially.
It always rotates. I think that the Canadiens and the Leafs and probably the Rangers are your big 3 in terms of just international recognition, because they're the oldest and biggest.
And money. They have big fan bases, and then they can afford to, their merch, et cetera, et cetera. All right. And then final question, mostly for Scotch Malted. It's been a while since someone's called you that. Who should the Habs, should the Habs re-sign Kazimir Kaskisuo for next year, possibly to a 2-way deal? While I don't watch a ton of Rocket games, it seemed to me that Kaz was on par with Dobish overall. And if either Montembeault or Primo get injured, I'm not sure Dobish is ready for the NHL. So Connor Hughes is that guy now?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that feels like that fell to Connor Hughes' job. The goaltending experts on Twitter seem to love him, and that maybe this offseason, once we get past the draft here, we'll talk to good friend Greg Ballack again too and see, hey, what is, what's the deal here? What can you tell us from what you've seen this year in some of these players here? Because I don't know diddly about nothing about goaltending in terms of all the technical parts of it, but it just seems like Kaskisuo is not the guy they thought was worth an NHL contract at this point. And Connor Hughes being available. He had a contract in Switzerland and, terminated that to join the Canadiens organization here. So I guess we'll see on that. It's still a long summer. It is June 6th. A lot can happen between now and the start of the season. But that is going to wrap up our show today. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com if you have questions. We will post some of the F1 questions because I don't know anything about the cars, about F1, except that they go fast. And everyone hates Lance Stroll, apparently. So that's all I know. Remember to follow Laura at The Active Stick. Follow myself at Scott Matla. Subscribe wherever you get your daily podcast, Google, Apple, Spotify, or here on YouTube.com. We will see you all next week, folks.